Good morning, everybody. This is Baffy, also known as Baffy Doodles on TikTok. I decided to finally make my own YouTube channel, and I thought what better way to start than with my OC Baffy. So for this one, we're doing the Cartoon Network Color Palette Challenge, and I decided to just do this all on one layer. I don't really do challenges that often, so I really like having fun with them when I can. Now, one of my favorite things to do with any of my drawings is I like to really exaggerate the expressions as much as I can and cut out big chunky shapes. By exaggerating these shapes, it can really help give it more emotion and give it more movement and a lot more life and personality to the drawing. Since this challenge has such a limited color palette, I wanted to really play around with these shapes and play around with the balance of where these colors are going to be. When planning out for the colors on this one, I tried to make sure not to keep two of the same color too close together, that way to kind of avoid clutter. And to help separate large chunks of color like the hair and the skin, I decided to go ahead and use the colors as inking as well. Now typically whenever I do a drawing, I have multiple layers. So I have a layer for my inking, my coloring, my highlights, my shadows, all that fun jazz. So I rarely do these with only one layer, and it does kind of present its own challenge. I do find that whenever you're using only one layer, it makes fixing certain things a bit more difficult because you're having to kind of cut it, readjust it, and recolor it in certain areas. Thankfully though, this was a limited color palette, so it does make it a little bit easier. So at this point, I thought I was done, but I wasn't really satisfied with it, so I decided to actually go in and redo a large amount of the skin. So during this process, I was trying to avoid accidentally coloring over any of the shapes, and at the same time, I was kind of trying to figure out what details I wanted to add and how I wanted to change the colors. It's at this point I decided to go ahead and use the pink as a shadow to kind of give it a little bit more depth. And you can see where I'm cutting out these shapes, that way I can make sure I know exactly where I want my shadows to start and end. Now I know earlier I said not to put two of the same color too close to each other, but I really wasn't satisfied with this yet, and I really wanted to add more color and more depth. So I decided to go ahead and use the yellow as secondary shadows, and I added kind of a tone between certain colors to give it a little bit more texture as well. Here's the finished piece, and thank you so much for watching. You can find all of my socials on my link tree.